Hey, hockey fans, welcome to the Idiots Talk Sports podcast. I'm your host, Kegan. I'm joined by Eric, and today we're going to be recapping the best inaugural season in NHL history with the Vegas Golden Knights. An absolute amazing performance by them in which they posted 51 regular season wins. They made it all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals and really proved to be a bit of a hockey town and a bit of a surprise for the rest of the hockey community.
It's something, at the start of the season that I think people were really excited. I think hockey people in general was really excited to see another team come into the league. It's going to be in Vegas, a party city. And then with each and every night that went along, Vegas kept winning games. They won a game here, won a game there. They were looking good, just kept bringing out more and more fans. People really rallied behind that team. The fan base was great. The players, the whole show was amazing.
I think it took everybody by surprise, moving in, you think this team's going to have 20 wins. You know what I mean? It's going to be a pretty rough year. Fans are going to be in for one, but Bill Foley, the owner, and George McPhee said all along they need to win and win soon. And I think that that's the only way to really get your fan base behind you. That may be the secret to the St. Louis Blues, who are one of the most successful teams in terms of people showing – people buying their jerseys. I mean, they're a great franchise, and they made it to the Cup final their first 3 years. And I think you need to win some games to get some people behind you. And when we talk about the tragedy that occurred in Vegas and how that community really rallied around the team and how the team rallied for the community, it's truly an amazing story, and it's one that can never be replicated. I mean, we'll never see anything like this again, or at least – it's kind of tough to see a team like maybe Seattle moving in here and doing anything close to this. And it's going to be tough if you're the GM of the Seattle, whatever their names are, coming in. You're going to have to explain to your owner that this is not how it usually goes.
Inflated expectations there, thanks to the Golden Knights. But again, what a fun season it was. The team did everything right, and the fans, again, did everything right. And it was great to see hockey really take off in the desert the second time around.
That's right. When you look at how kind of poorly the Arizona Coyotes are faring, it's really nice to see just a couple hundred miles away Vegas doing a lot better. And we'll dip into a little bit of the regular season stats here. We have 274 goals for, which is tied for fourth in the league with Pittsburgh. This is a team in which Marchessault was going to be their number one player. In his best year, I think he had 60 points. This is not a team led by Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin and has Phil Kessel and Chris Letang in a power play that absolutely dominates. It's a team that is led by a Riley Smith who was given up by Florida and Jonathan Marchessault who's given up by Florida. And to see those guys and the emergence of William Karlsson who ended up having 78 points, 43 goals, 35 assists, really had an amazing year. But I do want to mention that a 23.4 shooting percentage is not sustainable in the NHL. At least we've never seen it happen twice in a row. So if you're Vegas, for sure don't sign him to a $9 million contract. But anyhow, really excellent performances from guys like Marchessault, Perron, Smith. James Neal had a great year there. And 228 goals against, which was 8th in the league. And that wouldn't be surprising from a team manned by Marc-Andre Fleury, except that he only played 42 games, I think. I think he played, 40-something games because he was out with injury for most of the season. They played 5 goalies this year. Malcolm Subban having a good couple of games. Oscar Dansk looked great in a few games. And Maxime Lagacé did not really look like he was ready for the NHL level, just looking back stats-wise. The stats don't always tell the full story, but Oscar Dansk had a phenomenal couple of games with them. But to start 5 goalies, Dylan Ferguson was one of them. That's kind of a nightmare situation for any team, and it's crazy to see how they got through all of that. They never got down. I don't think they lost 3 games in a row all year. I think the playoffs were the first time in the entire year for them that they lost 3 in a row, which is truly amazing with a team of misfits. And that's that's what they ended up identifying as is we are the Vegas Misfits, and boy, that chip on the shoulder paid off for him this year.
I think a pretty lofty goal, if you're going to go back to the start of the season, would have been just to be a 500 club. Win half the games, lose half the games. That's great. If you're a brand new team coming into this league and you can post a 500 record, you know you're going to be going places. But, what this team did, looking back at the stats, looking at the goaltending, the forwards, everything, it's so impressive. And, obviously the team's led up front by Marchessault, but the real leader is Marc-Andre Fleury back there in net.
That's right.
And I feel that he gave, like Kegan had said, they had 5 different goalies, and I think Marc-Andre Fleury was a big reason why Malcolm Subban and Dansk were able to play the way they were. It helps so much having that kind of veteran goalie to learn from.
There's no question. There's a leadership aspect there, and you really question with Marc-Andre Fleury, had things worked out a little differently, had there not been an expansion team, if Pittsburgh makes it a little farther this year. Not only because maybe he wouldn't have started a game in the playoffs with the Penguins, but just having that reassurance behind you that if you do have a bad game, that guy can come in and really save your team, save your game, I think is what really benefited Matt Murray in the last couple of years. And that's not to take anything away from the guy. I mean, he's a 2-time Cup champion, and he's not even 22,
sure.
I don't think. But with that said, Fleury is undoubtedly a leader on that team.
And Fleury should not be a backup in this league. He shouldn't fight
That's right.
for minutes out there. That's a guy you want to play 2/3, 3/4 of the games, and that's what Vegas expects out of him. And I feel he's going to keep delivering. So.
And we'll talk a little bit about their playoff record. I mean, their first 3 series, they won 4 of 5, and that is just absolutely nuts. I think going into the LA series, you knew that LA didn't have a ton of firepower. They weren't a very strong team offensively, but Jonathan Quick is going to show up, and these guys play defense so well, and it kind of proved to be one of those series where not a lot of goals were scored, but Jonathan Quick had a lights out performance, and it still wasn't enough because Marc-Andre Fleury is on the other side of that.
Well, and the Kings are so good at just grinding teams down. They're going to play hard every night. They're going to grind you down. They're going to get the greasy goals. They're not going to be pretty.
That's right.
But they're going to win games that way. But when it came time to play Vegas, I thought it'd go to 6 or probably 7 games. It didn't happen. Vegas took them out in 5. The speed proved to be too much for LA to handle.
That's right. And moving forward, when they beat LA, you say, you know what, you give there's almost an asterisk. You say, well, LA didn't have any goal scorers, and wait till they play the San Jose Sharks with an emerging Evander Kane who had a tremendous first round, and a lot of these younger guys, Pavelski, a lot of these guys who are Jonas Donskoy, extremely offensively talented team with a lot of high-end talent. Brent Burns, a lot of high-end talent on the San Jose Sharks, and you say, well, you know what, it's going to be different against them. San Jose is going to prove to be too much. I was one of those guys that said, you know what, there's no way they get past San Jose. I just don't see it happening in any universe. That series might have gone to 6. Did it go to 6?
I think it ended in 5.
It may have ended in 5. Mind-blowing, really, to think that San Jose couldn't win 4 games against the Vegas Golden Knights. But every game, it was the neutral zone speed, the turnovers, how well they managed the puck. When they got a lead on you, they didn't let you have it back. And that was the most powerful thing about that team in the second round, and really all playoffs long, is that when they got that lead, they shut it down, and you were not getting another goal.
Well, and Vegas didn't look intimidated by all that star firepower that the San Jose Sharks and the Winnipeg Jets possess. It didn't even seem to faze them. They went out there. They dictated the way those games were played from the moment the puck dropped in just about every game. And they just didn't seem to take any steps backwards those first 3 series. And then it came time to play the Washington Capitals.
And when they hit the Washington Capitals, it's coming off a very emotional series in the Winnipeg series in which a team, most hockey fans again said, no chance the Vegas Golden Knights get past the Winnipeg Jets. Early Cup favorite this year, had a tremendous season. Tons, again, of offensive talent. I mean, their top 6 is as good as any top 6 in the league, and their defense, anchored by Byfuglien.
You talk about a scary team on paper.
Scary team on paper, and Vegas kind of just breezes right through them. I mean, a lot of these series, when they're going on, you're thinking, okay, Winnipeg's got to get one here, Winnipeg's got to get one here, and they just never did. Vegas just kept steaming right along, and moving into the Washington series, you have to really think that most people at this point, now that we've got 3 series that Vegas has just breezed right through, people are now starting to get behind the Vegas Golden Knights. You see it in the broadcast. every day before the game they're going, well, Vegas is just too fast, or just too this, or just too that.
It's because they made it look so easy.
That's right. And it was effortless. Marc-Andre Fleury was playing lights out. You look at his double save against Scheifele. I want to say it was Game 5 against the Jets, maybe Game 4. I mean, he had that double save that's still making the NHL countdown, top 10 best saves in the playoffs. That's a top 20 save in the playoffs in history.
Fleury made so many big saves all playoffs long that I think many of those big saves get lost. It's hard to remember them all because he made so many.
He bailed them out so many times.
But that's not to take away from Vegas' play.
Right.
Again,
that's
Vegas
right.
played great in front of him, again, until they came up against a red-hot, fired-up Washington Capitals team who could just do it all. And Vegas, they did look a little outmatched there. That's the first time we'd seen them look outmatched. They didn't look intimidated by the star power Washington. They just didn't have an answer for the game Washington was bringing.
It's something we were saying all along. It just looked as though the magic was gone. Their plays that were normally working,
that have worked against every team.
That have worked against every other team were not working against Washington. I don't even know if we can count how many posts they had, how many open nets they had, the save by Braden Holtby. All these things, Washington's power play was red hot yet again, as it's been. You just can't. That team this year was not going to be denied, and that's not to take away from Vegas.
And that's the thing. It's not so much that Vegas played bad in the finals. It's just that Washington played so good.
That's right. And really, they won a game, the first game against Washington, a 6-4 game, 5-4 with an empty netter. And after the first game, I mean, we were buckling our seatbelts. Like, this is going to be a series for the ages. And in hindsight, as it's going on, the teams are always in it. But in hindsight, you have to say that after that, I mean, Washington just locked it down, and it just wasn't going to be taken from them. They were not going to be denied, but they won that Cup final game. They are the most successful first-year franchise in league history. And there's a ton of really interesting stories that are going to play in this offseason. They have $30 or $32 million, depending on what the salary cap's looking like next year.
A lot of room
in cap space, and they are going to be aggressive with it. Bill Foley's already said it. Look, we're planning to spend some money, so depending on who they bring back, they might have a lot more room than we think. And you've got some guys up for RFA. William Karlsson has arbitration rights. What do they pay him? And you have to think that no matter what it is, it might be an overpayment. Once again, he shot 23.5%, which is a lot like the TJ Oshie 33-goal year that he had a couple years back and signed his $5 million deal, which looks like a deal in hindsight. But at the time, there were a lot of people upset about that contract.
Well, and with a guy like William Karlsson, it's kind of tricky what you do there because you look at what he was able to do this first season with Vegas, and it's like, do you pay him based off his past performances and what he was able to do, or do you pay him in terms of what you expect in the future? And it's just tough to say whether he's going to keep producing the way he is or not. It's a little bit of a gamble there.
Right. We're in the league now where you get paid based on what you're going to do, not what you've done. And that's good for the young guys trying to make some money. You've got Connor McDavid inked a $100 million contract, and he'd only played a season and a half, basically.
It's that future projection.
Exactly. So, I'd almost hate to see William Karlsson ink a $7.5 or $8 million deal because while you're getting an extremely defensively responsible two-way center, top-line center, a high-level talent, I just don't know that contract will look great in 5 or 6 years, but who knows? I mean, this is all speculation.
Well, and again, it's hard to make future projections when you don't look at you don't factor in past statistics as much because that shows you what that guy kind of should be making. So it's kind of a catch-22 there.
You can't even factor it in because, Columbus never really gave him a chance. He was a fourth-line center for them. He played on the penalty kill, and he had 9 goals. It's like a team that didn't play him and then a team that played him all the time, and he had an unreal shooting percentage. So who knows moving forward what they sign William Karlsson to. I'm sure they're going to want to lock him down. That's obvious. Marchessault has already signed.
He's going to be back. Marchessault's going to be back.
Marchessault's already signed an extension with them. They obviously want to keep him. You've got Colin Miller with arbitration rights. And, Colin Miller lost a few points in my book for whatever that's worth, which is nothing. But in this postseason, it looked as though he hurt his team more times than he helped them. You know, when I look back to the Cup Finals and a little bit of the embellishment that we were seeing out of the Golden Knights, 85% of it was him, unfortunately. And I think that hurt them in the last few games where maybe they could have gotten some calls but didn't because the refs buckled down and said, we're not going to call when you snap your head back. You know, we're not going to call when TJ Oshie reverse hits you and, you know, quote-unquote breaks your nose without any blood or black eyes the next day. But, you know, maybe these would have been calls if Miller had stayed on his feet a few more times, if Miller had looked a little stronger on his skates, not snapped his neck back. We don't know. And moving forward, Colin Miller is a right shot defender with a ton of offensive upside. Really looks like could be a good signing for them. But I think it's important as the Vegas Golden Knights to not get too emotionally attached to your numbers this year. Because if you say, we made it to the Cup Final, we've got to pay everybody, they might be in a bad situation in a few years. Because I think the chip on your shoulder has something to do with their success this year.
Well, and a guy that I'd like to talk about here who had a great regular season with the Vegas Golden Knights, but I really felt like as the playoffs went on, he seemed to slow down out there, was David Perron.
That's right, yeah.
So what does Vegas do with David Perron? You know, he put up 66 points, 16 goals, 50 assists during the regular season, but come playoff time, he only put up 1 goal and 8 assists for a total of 9 points.
And he was scratched in the finals, you know, and that's something to factor in. But a 50 assist season is good for 5 or 6 million in this league today. You know, I mean that's a huge offensive contribution, and a guy like David Perron is going to be. I mean, he's always been good for 15 or 20 goals.
And David Perron's a fun guy to watch. He has moves. He makes great passes.
He's
good around the net. You know, he can shoot. He's a great offensive player. And like I said, he's a lot of fun to watch. I think he's a player that Vegas fans enjoy having on their team. I loved watching him when he was in St. Louis. And what do you do with David Perron? It's tough. I think if you're Vegas, you're probably going to look to re-sign him because he is such a big, part of your offensive core. I don't think you can afford to lose him. But again, as the playoffs wore on, the thing that concerned me was it almost looked like it may have been even a conditioning issue. He just looked like he was starting to get worn out out there.
A little tired out there.
You saw him coasting a little bit here and there, kind of wasn't making as good of mental plays as we had seen him make.
You know, he could have been hurt too. And you've got a couple of guys that eat nachos here talking about conditioning. But he could have been hurt. You know, a lot of these guys are hurt this time of year. A lot of these guys are banged up. You know, but I think Perron is more likely to come back than James Neal.
Yeah.
Because James Neal ought to ink, a $6.5 million, almost based off what he has done. He may not be one of these guys that is signed based on what he's going to do because of his age, because he's a little up there. But he's consistent. You can expect 20 goals out of him. You can expect.
He has that track record.
Right. And James Neal is a character guy. There's no question. He wore an A this year. But I think Perron's more likely to come back than Neal. I don't know where Neal goes. I don't even know who needs a James Neal. But I think Neal's going to get $5 or $6 million this offseason,
Well, something I'll say about James Neal, though, if you're Vegas, is how much did it help having a veteran out there in the playoffs James Neal up front?
Time.
So there is a lot of value to be had if you're Vegas when it comes to James Neal in that kind of a role, that veteran assistant captain role. That's another guy where do you sign him? Do you not? That's a tough one.
And let's say James Neal scores that goal in Game 5 there. How different could that game look? There's always, coulda, woulda, shouldas. But that game could have been a heck of a lot different. And I think it's important, once again, especially with David Perron, to not get emotional about these guys' performance, whether it's good or bad, and say, well, David Perron didn't produce in the offseason, so we got to let him go. I don't think that does David Perron any justice. I think he's a much better hockey player than he showed. And like I said, he could have been hurt too. And when you look at a guy like Ryan Reeves, is he coming back to Vegas? Is he enough of a fan favorite? Do they think that his services are worth bringing back again? And if not, where does he even sign? It's kind of tough for a situation like Reeves, a guy that he's the enforcer, and he's kind of the guy you need out there to answer to a Tom Wilson or Dustin Byfuglien out there. But at the same time, this league is getting faster and faster, and a guy like Ryan Reeves is not getting faster and faster.
The thing with Ryan Reeves is, I think if you're a Vegas fan, you love having that kind of a guy on your team.
That
I think
grit, you need it.
You need that grit. But now, when it comes down to, is he that valuable to our team in management's eyes? Again, hard to say. I mean, the enforcer position is kind of becoming more and more obsolete. Like, do these teams really need that kind of a player out there? I feel like they do, but we're seeing less and less of it.
Well, what we're seeing more of, and what we did see, was the enforcer who can play,
right?
The Tom Wilson. So enforcers are having to change their game up a little bit, get a little faster, get a little better around the net, because they've got to be able to do it all nowadays. There is no guy out there like a Stu Glatt who just goes out there and plasters guys, the Hanson brothers. There's none of that anymore. You've got to be able to do it all. You've got to be able to score. You've got to be able to skate and hit. And that category is shrinking more and more throughout the years. And we talk about Lucas Spiza, a big UFA on the back end, wore an assistant letter again. Does Spiza come back? He had 2 terrible blunders in Game 5, and again, you don't want to get too emotional, but does a guy like that earn a spot on the roster next year? More importantly, we can talk about Shea Theodore and the year he had. He's a restricted free agent for them. Young guy, ton of upside. He was a big prospect from the Ducks this last offseason, and he didn't really have all that great of a playoff role. But you got to expect them to sign him, maybe to a bridge deal, a couple years, 4 or 5. You don't really want to see a guy like him right now locked up to an 8-year deal. 8 times 6. You really want to see Vegas be a little conservative here and see what they can do again for next season.
Well, and they need to give some of these guys time.
That's right.
They need to play a few seasons. They need to see who really meshes well together, who they need to re-sign. It's so hard to say because they've only played 1 season together. So looking at this, it's really tough to make any kind of calls. I think we know for sure you have to sign William Karlsson. I feel like you do need to sign David Perron. James Neal's a big question mark. Again, Ryan Reeves, question mark. It's so tough to say.
There's a lot of unanswered questions here. You've got Tomáš Nosek, who really had a great final. I think he scored 2 goals in the finals, and big goals at that. Tomáš Nosek came to play every night. He's a reliable guy. He's got arbitration rights. What do they go to arbitration? And if so, what is an arbiter rule that he's worth? I mean, he probably wants to take a step up this year. Doesn't want to play again on that 4th line. I think he's talented enough too, and he's got a little bit of grit too. He's not a guy that's going to get pushed around out there. And speaking of guys who aren't going to get pushed around, another RFA they have is William Carrier. If you bring back Reeves, do you bring back Carrier, and vice versa? I think those 2 guys play that same role, but Carrier has more offensive upside. So is Reeves worth more than a Carrier? And if not, do you get a 4th or 5th for Carrier and cut your losses as an RFA? Who knows? And I really think that there's a ton of questions for this team to answer in the offseason. And there's 5 unrestricted free agents in the minors that we didn't even mention. Guys like Brendan Peary, Clayton Stoner, these guys that maybe didn't get a chance this offseason that were kind of just excess picks at the expansion draft. And I would hate to be George McPhee. I mean, playing be a GM mode, if I've got 15 UFAs, I've got a hard time just resigning. That's not even real, they're inking real contracts here.
He's going to be busy throughout the offseason. No doubt about it. I think, the positives you got to take away from all this is Vegas looks like they're going to be able to keep their core group intact, which is so huge for this team going forward. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. It's more
important that you've got a guy like Karlsson who's happy, and I think there's something to be said about Vegas not inking 8 or 9. They have nobody that's making 8 or 9 or 10 million, and a lot of these teams do. So maybe there's that hierarchy in the locker room. Whatever Marchessault signed, do you match that with William Karlsson? Is Karlsson okay with that term and that money? Does he want to explore? I doubt any one of these guys wants to explore their options elsewhere. Maybe a James Neal. But a lot of these guys are going to want to return and see what they could do again next year. As Eric mentioned, it's their first year. It's their first year together. And do they improve next season? I think that's a huge speculation, not one that I even want to get into. But it's hard to imagine that they'll make a second finals appearance. But it's been done before. And at the same time, it's probably not out of the question to imagine.
Well, it seems like these guys are all hungry for more hockey. They're ready to get back at it. They want to get better. I think it was Nate Schmidt saying, when the season's over, he normally looks forward to going out, partying, having beers. And he said, all I feel like doing is playing hockey. I want to get better. I want to come back a better player. And it seemed like that's going to be Vegas' MO in the offseason. They're all hungry to play. They got a taste of the finals there. So I think they're going to come back just fine. They're going to sign their core guys. It's a great time to be a fan of Vegas.
You really want to see a guy like Nate Schmidt take another step forward. I mean, this year he had 36 points, which is a huge step forward for him. He was a highly touted. I mean, he really, to be honest, he really wasn't a highly touted prospect in the Capitals organization, but he was that seventh guy last year. And anytime he was on the ice, I mean, last season, he's so fast. You notice his speed more than anything. And he's only going to get bigger and stronger moving forward. And a guy like Nate Schmidt, you got to love him. He gives a fantastic interview, always has a smile on his face. And when you see that kind of fire, like Eric said, and saying, no, all I want to do is go play. All I want to do is get better. I mean, this is going to be something to really look out for. What if every guy in Vegas, what if they re-sign everybody? James, what if they bring back the same team? And I think that, it's the salary cap era. This team could afford to bring everybody back and maybe even add another piece.
That's a great point. Do you even need to make any kind of adjustments or improvements if you're Vegas? They went so deep. They look so good. Why not bring this exact same team back?
It's always going to be a different league, but at the same time, you want it to be offset with the progress of your players. So let's say they all come back 20% better. Is that enough to have a better? I mean, when you have Marc-Andre Fleury, you're in every game. I mean, if Marc-Andre Fleury even plays 85% of the way he played this year, you're in every game. Every game he starts, you have an opportunity to win. And Malcolm Subban, a waiver claim from the Boston Bruins, had a tremendous year as a backup when he was healthy, when he was playing. And really, you've got some questions here with Legacy and Dansk. I think Dansk is ready for a backup gig somewhere, and he's a restricted free agent with arbitration rights, and he's going to want to play. He had just a very short sample this year, but he's going to want to play somewhere. He's going to want to get some more minutes, and I know he's ready to get out of the minors. At least that's what it looks like. So who knows? That they've got questions of goaltending too. They've got a bunch of goaltending depth actually, but do you bring a guy like Maxim Legacy back to be your minors goaltender? That third spot, because the way it's looked so far is that Fleury, well, maybe he's not as fragile as everybody has thought he is nowadays. Fleury is injury prone. He's a smaller guy, and Malcolm Subban has not exactly had a great stretch without injuries to this point. So who knows what happens at the goaltending position? If you just hope that when these guys are healthy, like I said, they're in every single game.
And I think they will be. I don't see any reason why they won't.
That's right. And we'll get into to some fun facts here. George McPhee had the way that they chose that team, they have said that it is not, it was obviously not expected that they would do this well this year, but to see how they strategically went out and they said, we need speed, we need quick decision makers, and that's what they ended up getting. They got one of the faster teams in the league, and a team that capitalized on your mistakes quickly.
Well, I think George McPhee had a vision that he carried. He went through on.
That's right.
He knew what he wanted, and he went ahead and did it. And that's what you get from a veteran GM. I mean, he was the Caps GM from 97 to 2014, which was the longest tenure for a Caps GM in their history.
Made a lot of great moves and one historically terrible one that we won't get into because a lot of Caps fans are still mad about that. But McPhee truly is a brilliant mind of the game. And a fun fact Eric told me before the podcast, he even punched a head coach of the Chicago Blackhawks in 1999. That's some good old-fashioned hockey for you. And
it cost him his watch and maybe a few black eyes in the parking lot afterwards. But
that's right. But I mean, that's the kind of stuff you kind of want to see. Obviously he's a little older now and isn't going to be doing stuff like that.
Why not have a fiery GM running the show?
And McPhee is a brilliant mind, and that's obviously clear. And it's Backstrom, Kuznetsov. I mean, literally all these
John
guys.
Carlson, Alex Semin, Braden Holtby. The list goes on and on.
All these guys who contributed to their Stanley Cup win this year were drafted by George McPhee. So
he knows how to build a team, is what we're saying. He knows how to build a team. He knows what he's looking for. He's just a great guy to have running that show there. really the best fit in Vegas you could ask for.
And you think about some of the prospects they have. I mean, they're 3 first-round picks: Brandstrom, Glass, and Suzuki. With McPhee's drafting record, are any one of these guys ready for next season? I heard some chats about maybe Glass being involved in a big blockbuster deal, but I highly doubt that. You're not going to want to get rid of these guys before they have a chance. And Brandstrom is an incredible defensive talent. Glass, great upside, and again Suzuki, a little bit smaller, Nick Suzuki, but at the same time, great offensive upside. Are any of these guys ready to make a step forward next year? Or obviously a lot of these guys maybe have some AHL stints in their future, but at the same time, you never know in today's league. I mean, you see a lot of – I mean, who was Jake Gensel a few years ago? And now he's one of the most prolific playoff scorers per game that we've ever seen.
With some of these guys, you just would never expect they're going to step up the way they do.
And it requires a chance. A lot of these guys are just needed to be given a chance. And in today's league, it's about speed. And these kids are so fast. It's unreal. I mean, you see the Jacob Vrana goal in Game 5. Number one, there was nobody in position, but there was no chance you're going to catch a kid like him. And he's 21. He's a kid.
Well, and what's amazing is when we talk about speed of the game, we're not just talking about the way they move their legs, and we're talking about their puck handling, the way that puck comes off their stick when they take a shot, their mental process, decision making, everything they do out there is so lightning fast nowadays. It's unreal. It's almost like they're machines.
That's right. And I think perhaps of all of these things, the number one reason to be most excited if you're a Vegas Golden Knights fan is that Gerard Gallant is returning, obviously, as head coach. I mean, this guy, he's known as a player's coach. He's known as one of these guys who doesn't yell at his players. He's not the John Tortorella, always asking for the world. He wants them to go out there and give their best, and players cannot say enough about this guy. It's really amazing to hear all his stories and his journey and being sent down to the junior level, winning at the junior level, coming back, getting fired in Florida, which is one of the most savage things I've ever seen.
22 games into the season.
22 games. They went 10-11-1. And by the way, after that, they did not do well. But, no player in Florida would have voted for Gallant to leave, especially in the fashion that he did. They were in Carolina, and they basically said, find a way home. And I'm sure there's some context to that. I'm sure there was maybe some off-color words said that would lead to something like that. But they basically said, find a way home. And he got into a taxi and found a way home. I mean, they didn't even charter the guy out, didn't even fly him. So it was really to see something like that happen and then to see him return this year and have the year he had. I mean, easy Jack Adams.
Well, and what's so neat about Gallant, and just from, you never hear a bad thing about the guy. They say how approachable he is, but they say his strongest asset is his ability to groom younger players and really elevate their game, get them to that level to where they're going to be standouts. He coached John Huberdeau in the Quebec Major Junior League when he was actually Huberdeau was on his 2011 Memorial Cup winning team, and there was some talk as to that was part of the reason why Gallant ended up in Florida, because that's where Huberdeau went. So
and all he's done for all those guys' game. I mean, when you look at Gallant saying to McPhee, "Hey, you need this guy in Marchessault," it's because he's worked with him before, and he knew that Marchessault was going to work hard day in and day out, and the fact that that's obviously going to go down as a historically terrible, move there, and there's probably salary cap reasons and all other types, so we don't want to spend money on these guys, but Smith and Marchessault were such big pieces for the Golden Knights this year, and you really look back and scratch your head a little bit with that one, especially with Marchessault signing. I want to say he's only signed for $5.5 or mid-5s, which is a bargain. It could even be $6 million. That's still a bargain for that guy. He's a reliable 30-goal scorer, an energy guy, and a guy who's going to show up night in and night out. And this team, once again, there's nothing to worry about as a Vegas Golden Knights fan, and I don't think that they're going to resend too much next year. I really think that they're going to be strong for years to come. They've got a ton of picks in the next few years in the draft. Not a lot of high or early picks. They don't have a first this year. They've got one pick in the first round in each of the next 2 years, but they've got, I want to say they have 11 picks next year. I mean, just second and third round and fourth and fifth rounders. All these picks, and really, McPhee said, we want to build this team from the draft up.
Well, and to recap, the things to look out for here, well, it's how much are they going to pay William Karlsson? Like we had mentioned, they got to get him signed. That's huge. Do they keep James Neal? Do they keep David Perron?
Ryan Reeves.
There's a few question marks there, but all in all, there shouldn't be nothing that's going to shake them up too majorly in one way or another. So I think
and George McPhee has his work cut out for him. Is all we're saying here. There's a lot of signings coming up for this team, and do they bring the entire team back? I don't think that's the league that we're in today. This is not franchise mode in NHL 18. There's obviously things that come into this. There's what guys want to be paid. Do they even want to stay? And all these guys are gonna want to return this year. So maybe some guys take discounts, but is a guy willing to receive a discount when he knows you have $32 million in cap space, or does he just want to get paid? And you can't blame these guys for wanting to make the money when you can, because you don't play hockey forever. But with all that said, we look forward to the off season here. Who knows? We might see a deal like Erik Karlsson coming to the Vegas Golden Knights for some prospects and some draft picks, which the Vegas Golden Knights have plenty of. So with all that said, thanks to anybody for listening today to the Idiots Talk Sports podcast on the state of the Vegas Golden Knights. Have a great day. Thanks.